And finally, Isaiah chapter 21. I'm skipping over Isaiah 20. It has relevance of things you can learn, but it's very much mostly to the historical context of the conflict between Egypt, Cush, and Assyria back in Isaiah's day. So we're going to skip over that because it's not very specific about the end of the age at all. Isaiah 21 is somewhat similar. The thing about Isaiah 21 is that it does describe the historic fall of Babylon to the Persians, but there's a little more than that. And later biblical prophets who are referencing end time scenarios come back and quote Isaiah 21. So it's more than just a historic thing. It's historic plus. It's an interim fulfillment, but there's more to Isaiah 21 that, again, it's very much kind of overlapping. There is historical application to this in those generations back in Isaiah's day, but there's more than that. And later, the fact that later biblical authors come back and reference this to talk about the end of the age is why I want to touch on it. We don't have to go into major detail on it because a lot of it's historic, but the themes of what happened, I don't know, in principle, there's things that we need to understand from this chapter. An oracle of the Lord concerning the wilderness of the sea. It's talking about the nations as whirlwinds in the Negeb, which is a desert, sweep on. It comes from the wilderness, from a terrible land. What is it? Isaiah is describing this. He starts to see this like troubling vision regarding some kind of distant, terrible threat. A stern vision is told to me in verse 2. A traitor betrays, and the destroyer destroys. So go up, O Elam, and lay siege, O Media. I'm talking about some areas that are around what would be Persia at that time. And they are, he's kind of calling them to battle because he's seeing the destruction of Babylon. And so he's saying all these areas around Babylon, raise up because trouble is coming to Babylon. And all the sighing that she has caused, I will bring to an end. This is being spoken about Babylon. Therefore, my loins are filled with anguish. Pangs have seized me like the pangs of a woman in labor. I am bowed down. Essentially, Isaiah's gripped with the dread. There's some kind of like transference of the emotion of what he's seeing in this vision where he sees the destruction of Babylon and it fills him with dread as the prophet who's seeing this vision. And that there's a lot more we could, explore about that. But for the sake of time, I'm bowed down that I cannot hear, and I am dismayed that I cannot see. My heart staggers. Horror has appalled me. The twilight I've longed for has been turned for me into trembling. Wow. So what does he see? What is this vision that is causing him such anguish and trouble? They prepare a table, they prepare the rugs, they eat and they drink, but arise, O princes, oil the shield. And commentators go back and forth about, what exactly are we seeing here in verse 5? And there's arguments about what this means. I think in terms of context, what makes the most sense in terms of the context of what Isaiah is seeing here is that he sees merriment in Babylon, and they're not expecting their defeat. They're not expecting what's about to happen to them. They're going on. They're preparing their tables, they're spreading their rugs, they're making themselves comfortable, and they don't expect what's about to happen. And Isaiah is saying, arise, O princes, oil your shields, prepare for battle. You don't realize what's about to come on you suddenly. For thus the Lord said to me, go set a watchman. The watchman is Isaiah. Isaiah is the watchman. And Isaiah identifies himself as the watchman in this chapter. But the Lord says, go set a watchman. Let him announce what he sees. So here's Isaiah. He goes to be a watchman. He says, when the watchman sees a rider or horseman in pairs, the riders on donkeys, riders on camels, let him listen diligently. Listen very diligently. This is very high importance. Then he who saw, which is Isaiah, cried out, upon the watchtower I stand, O Lord, continually, day and night, all day, and at my post I'm stationed whole nights. He's saying prophetically, I am being a diligent watchman. And behold, here come riders, horsemen in pairs. And he answered, what does the horseman say? Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. As they were just doing, verse 5, preparing a table. But then suddenly, Isaiah is expecting to hear news of conflict. He's expecting to hear news of Babylon is besieged. But no, Babylon is fallen. It's already done. It's over. Fallen is Babylon suddenly. And all the carved images of her gods and all has all been shattered to the ground. O my threshed and winnowed one. O my threshed and winnowed one, what I've heard from the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I announce to you. So at this point, let me just touch on this one more time briefly. In this vision, Isaiah sees himself as a prophetic watchman. He's very diligent. He's being a prophetic watchman day and night, very diligently. And rather than receive word that the armies are approaching Babylon or that Babylon is embattled with some adversary, Isaiah hears that Babylon's already fallen. It's done. The betrayer of verse 2 is very swift and precise and severe. Up here, a stern vision. The traitor betrays, the destroyer destroys. That's not Babylon. This traitor who betrays, and destroyer who destroys is the Antichrist. It's the opponent of Babylon who causes the sudden and terrible fall of Babylon. Suddenly, fallen is Babylon, and this vision is gripping Isaiah with dread because of the wrath of the Antichrist, because of what this is going to mean, what comes after that, because of the terrible destruction that Isaiah described in chapter 13. That this betrayal moment of Babylon is the trigger of this terrible wrath that comes upon the nations that's described in chapter 13. We just looked at that a few moments back. There's going to be more to say about that next week in some of the later chapters, but I think it's important, though, for us to recognize that this is like a moment that Isaiah is highlighting. There's a betrayal moment and a destruction moment when the Lord kind of triggers this action of the Antichrist, that suddenly Babylon is defeated and suddenly something terrible, Isaiah 13 and this terrible tribulation sets on. And the identity of the characters in verse 10, pretty much everybody agrees is Israel. The threshed and winnowed one is Israel, the one who's gone through discipline. The one who's being the threshed and winnowed one is the one who's going through the process of God's discipline is Israel. They're the ones who are enduring the discipline of the tribulation, but they come out from it being the victorious threshed and winnowed one. And he says, what I've said, what I have heard from the Lord of hosts, I announce to you. And it's going to be very important for that generation who is alive for this to be ready. It's going to be very important for Israel to be paying attention to this, because there are sudden consequences that happen that are going to be revealed in later chapters related to this action, this moment that takes place. He's saying you've got to watch for this because it's going to happen quickly, and when it does, you need to take action. And he gets into what that action will be later. Jesus talks more about that in Mark 13 and Luke 21 and Matthew 24 as well. But that's just something that is going to be a key moment, a pivotal moment when we transition from rebellion to tribulation, is marked by a moment. And it's this betrayal and this destruction. And once that happens, you're entering into the tribulation and you need to be prepared to take action. And he's saying this to Israel so that they will pay attention and that they will be ready to take the appropriate action. Okay, there you go. At least the righteous, at least the prophetic watchman. It might not be Israel in the secular sense, but the righteous, who are the watchmen set on the walls, will know what to do. And hopefully those who are around, like Egypt, and that redemptive remnant that's in Egypt and Assyria that we read from chapter 19, they'll know what to do as well. We'll get into what that looks like in later chapters, because they describe, this is what you do. When you see this betrayal happen, do this. That's in some chapters we're going to get into. Really remarkable. Okay. The oracle concerning Duma and the oracle concerning Arabia, the commentators are not super certain about those, so I am not going to get too much into them. Essentially, the exact interpretation of that section from verses 11 and 12 is not exactly settled among commentators, but essentially, residents of Duma ask Isaiah how much longer the night will last, and Isaiah responds by encouraging the inquirer to continue seeking and asking. And there's a location related to that. I've actually got a map that I'll attach in the uploaded notes. The updated notes, when you go to the Servant Leader Network website or the app, will have a map attachment, and you can pull it up and you can see where is Israel, where is Duma, and where is this section of Arabia. I will go ahead and include that so that you can see it. But the same is kind of true of this Oracle of Arabia. It could be the Assyrian conflict that was happening in Isaiah's day. It's not super certain, but I've gone ahead and thrown in, some thoughts in the notes. This may have eschatological relevance, but it's not very certain, that section. So just going to go ahead and let that go. But this section up here, other prophets are going to come back and reference the first part of Isaiah 21, and that's why I felt like we needed to include it. Not the whole chapter, but especially the first 10 verses.